Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presenting her 8th consecutive budget, and it's been a record-breaking budget for many reasons, not just because it is her 8th, but also because she has delivered on the promise of providing relief to the middle class. We had gone into the budget with the focus on the 3 C's, Capex, consumption and consolidation, and the budget has managed to deliver on each one, but consumption clearly has been prioritized in budget 2025. Joining us now is the top brass of FICCI, Harshvardhan Agarwal, Anant Goenka, Shubhrakanta Panda, and Naina Lal Kidwai. Naina, gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Harsh, let me start by asking you, as I pointed out, prioritizing consumption, giving in tax relief, much more than perhaps what was expected and anticipated. On balance, your big headline from Budget 2025.
Thank you, Shireen, for having us with you. Yes, I think, the tax relief up to no tax till 12 lakh, that's a very welcoming step, from the finance minister. Yes, it has been the expectation from the industry as well as, our recommendation from FICCI to the government that, yes, we should give some relief on tax for the middle class. But yes, we were not expecting, to the level of 12 lakhs. So it's a very welcoming move, and certainly it will help the overall consumption.
It will help overall consumption. That's the hope, and that is what the budget promises to deliver on. But Anant, let's talk about Capex, and perhaps, it is short of industry's expectations, but, as I've been pointing out, the government has been signaling the fact that Capex has perhaps peaked at that 11-12 lakh crore rupee number, coming in at 11.21 lakh crore rupees, both on Capex as well as consumption, the dual power of what that could mean for growth.
Yes, we hope for about a 15% increase on the 11.11 lakh crore investment. That didn't happen. But I'd still say that there are a lot of other indications that signify continued investment in the longer term. 100 gigawatts of nuclear power over the next 20 plus years. I think that is no small number that will result in a lot more investment in power transmission, distribution, and other investments that will come in. The UDAN scheme, where you're talking about regional connectivity, more airports, I think that's another big announcement. Jal Jeevan Yojana, I think that's another one. So across the board, there are underlying signals of continued investment in Capex. For the coming year, yes, about 10%, 15% lower than what we expected.
Yes, certainly lower on that front, but more perhaps made up for or offset by the boost as far as tax measures are concerned to drive consumption. But Naina, let me come to you now with what the budget has delivered and what you believe this could do as far as accelerating growth is concerned. The budget pegs nominal GDP growth at 10.1%. What do you believe that this could do in terms of amplifying growth momentum from here?
I think what you've heard in terms of consumption and demand is a big amplifier. Capex itself is a big amplifier. There was very clear mention of the MSME sectors and continued focus on that, more so on the labor-intensive MSMEs, special mention of footwear, leather, toys, service sectors like tourism, because employment generation is not just employment generation because it provides jobs, but because it will be the accelerator through demand and consumption. So for me, these are very important aspects. I would just add on the point of infrastructure, almost a relief that the funding plans for the Jal Jeevan Mission and Swachh Bharat Mission continue to see focus, because these are very critical urban deliverables for health and also for the way we keep our rivers clean. And all the sectors, I was just seeing the numbers and the increases then, whether it's the National Ganga Plan by 13%, River Basin Management increase of 70%, Jal Jeevan Mission by 198%, Swachh Bharat 145% increases. So the success government has had in the implementation of these projects is giving them confidence to be able to spend further, because the absorptive capacity of these sectors has demonstrated that they are able to spend this in a meaningful way.
Well, let me welcome Vijay Shankar onto the program as well. Vijay, let's talk about manufacturing, the National Manufacturing Mission being announced. Of course, details awaited on the operationalization, the focus on labor-intensive sectors like leather, footwear, toys, specific mention there of making India a global hub for toys. Even on the exports front, of course, work in progress that will identify sectors and measures that are needed to amp up exports. But on balance, as far as Make in India 3.0 is concerned, what does the budget deliver on?
Budget has delivered a lot on the operational front, Shireen. I think, you spoke about exports and, the export promotion mission between the Finance Ministry and the Commerce Ministry, as well as the Bharat Trade Net, allowing people, rationalization of rates across TCS and TDS. There are a lot of operational improvements which I think really improve the daily work of an exporter who's meaning to do more and crack open new export markets. Including the announcement by the FM on the fact that on transfer pricing you don't keep provisional assessments open for beyond 3 years. I think these are very major steps in relieving the lives of a daily businessman from very many hassles that he has to undergo today. I think there's a huge focus on manufacturing. I think as Anand said earlier, the focus on the nuclear sector is, apart from the labor-intensive sectors that you spoke about, the focus on the nuclear energy is big. I'd like to also draw your attention to the focus on the shipbuilding and the shipping sector. Extending the tonnage tax relief to inland ships is a big benefit as they want to focus more on inland water transportation. Focus on import relief for equipment in the shipbuilding sector. Again, I think the marine sector has got huge potential in India. We have just a very small portion of the world trade today as far as ships go, hardly 1 or 2%. And I think the finance minister has focused a lot on that sector.
Yes, he certainly has focused on some of those sectors. But let me get Shubhrakant into the conversation as well. Shubhrakant, of course, plenty on the tax front, the direct tax code, the simplification, etc. Taking that forward as far as both TCS, TDS is concerned. Even on the customs duty side, significant changes being announced. On balance, your big headline from Budget 2025.
Well, Shireen, I think the real takeaway from this budget has been the finance minister delivering on our request, and I think everybody had made the point about putting money into people's hands, and I think she's done it in spectacular fashion. Because 1 lakh crores, is no mean amount, and that will find its way into the economy, that will find its way into consumption, and provide a much needed impetus to the growth momentum. But I think the common thread for me, which stood out through the budget presentation, was a focus on reforms. In fact, the FM specifically referred to reforms as the fuel of growth. And in this context, I think talking about strengthening the rules-based approach to a trust-based approach, I think is what will pay a lot of dividend going ahead. And in that context, the measures like the Jan Vishwas bill and many other recommendations that we have made have found its way into the budget. So I think money in people's hand is important. It is going to flow into the economy going ahead, and the focus on reforms to me are the big takeaways from this budget. Of course, many other aspects in addition to the infrastructure outlay, etc. The funds for creative redevelopment of cities, I believe, is very significant, because as we grow as an economy to cross 5 trillion and more, our cities are going to get larger. They need to be better managed. They need to be more easier to live in. So I think we are really seeing the building blocks of a real modern India being put into place.
Okay, Mr. Kanabar, you're perhaps going to be the busiest of our panel this afternoon, sir. I'm sure the phones are ringing off the hook, trying to understand the many changes that have come in, not just for personal income tax, but also, the simplification related to TDS, TCS, safe harbor rules, the GIFT City, and so on and so forth. What would you say were the key highlights as far as the tax part of this budget was concerned? What would you rate this budget on the tax front?
So before I come to just a humorous comment to say that if the new direct taxes bill as it is proposed to be introduced after a week is as simple as she makes out, then maybe I'll have to look for another job. So, but that's a separate matter altogether. But having said that, lots and lots of changes and lots of very welcome changes, Shireen, because if you look at it, most of the changes, for example, you go back and say that your price determination for transfer pricing is not for 1 year, but for 3 years. That's very, very welcome. Similarly, if you go back and say that you have a presence in India, but that is only for the purpose of exports, that will not constitute a taxable presence. Again, very, very welcome. Then again, the sunset provisions being extended for startups, etc., by five years. Most of the provisions of the gift city being extended by 5 years. Again, all very, very welcome. The extension of gift city to leasing of shipping, again, very, very welcome. So huge number of changes. There are some small changes which are a cause of concern. There is, for example, a retrospective amendment on a Supreme Court judgment in the case of safari retreats. I won't go into all of them. But overall, I would say from a tax perspective, a great attempt to simplify and provide a roadmap for the next 5 years rather than deal with a year at a time, which I think is very, very welcome.
Let's talk about what this can mean now as far as the immediate term is concerned for consumption. And Harsh, we'd started to see a pickup as far as rural was concerned. Urban was still feeling the pinch. After what has been announced today by way of tax relief, how immediate do we expect the change to be, the pickup to be? Are we still talking at least a few quarters out?
Shireen, I believe, because this has the potential to bring the money in the hand of the consumers, but yes, it might not happen, immediately from next month. I would say maybe, at least we need to wait for another month, another quarter or so before we see the impact of this on the consumption. But apart from this step of the tax reduction, there are many other areas, which has the potential to improve the consumption, the things that she has done for the rural, the agriculture. So it's a very inclusive budget, where again, if the income at the farm level, at the agriculture level increases, so that also has the potential to boost the consumption. These things also, if the consumption increases, it will help in improving the private investment, which we all are talking about, it's not growing or it's not happening as per the expectation. So I think this is a big move and this has the potential to impact in many ways in the economy.
Yes, Anant, going back to the changes, and we've also seen, even as far as the auto sector is concerned, specific changes. In fact, the customs duties on CBUs has been cut across cars, and I'm given to understand across two-wheelers as well. Specifically from the auto sector's point of view, anything, and of course, lots there on the clean energy transition, batteries, and so on and so forth. Anything there in specific that you liked?
Yeah, I think there was a boost towards electrification. So there was a fair amount of mention on a battery, on rare minerals, and making that more accessible for battery manufacturing and storage. Recycling of battery is likely to get a fair amount of boost over time, and general mention of clean tech across the board. Besides that, I would say there was not much else. We are seeing fairly positive headwinds today on the two-wheeler sector and on the farm sector, positive tailwinds on SUVs. I think it is the CV and passenger segment that we hope to see increase, but not much mention on the budget, largely on the auto sector, except for a thrust on making EVs more real.
Yes, and there is, of course, an allocation there as far as the PM e-Vahan scheme, etc. is concerned. But Naina, now the budget is done. All eyes shift to the MPC and whether we will see a rate cut being delivered by the MPC. But, two questions there. One, do you expect a rate cut? Two, between the budget and a rate cut, do you really expect a pickup as far as private capex is concerned, which is the ask of the government? And my second question, with the changes that have been brought in as far as the new tax regime is concerned, do you anticipate that we'll now shift, whatever was remaining on the old tax side will now shift, and it'll be the sunsetting on the old tax regime? Because the insurance companies, for instance, reacting negatively to that because the tax breaks don't exist on the new tax regime side.
So I think, Shireen, it's a journey. The direction is right. Are we ever happy with what we get? No, we always want more. Does private sector Capex go up just because demand and consumption is addressed to some extent through the changes in this budget? Not in itself. So the issues in terms of challenges of ease of doing business, the way trade might develop, even while we look through thrust exports with all the advantages of presenting and being part of a global supply chain with the China +1 type of strategy, is happening at a time where tariffs are going up, certainly from one of our biggest trading partners, being the US. So there are headwinds in trade and exports, which may in fact get in the way of our own thrust in exports. So we can only do what we can do. Putting domestic consumption, job creation at the local level, domestic tourism, etc., is in our hands. And even while we push to be part of that export chain, I just think if I can come in on finance and related areas where there's been some stress, as you well know, in microfinance, and I'm glad to see that got mentioned in this budget, with the Grameen Credit Scores framework for SHG members being looked at, because we really don't want to get into the situation we had many years ago in microfinance, or indeed in personal loans, where the credit data does not allow us to capture multiple loans by the same individual. So focus on that, focus on revamping the KYC registry. These are all going to be helpful in terms of the financial infrastructure that we need to help that growth and consumption. And I think if we can also look at what the advantages on the mergers and acquisitions, FDI and insurance bring, these are significant for those industries specifically and should not be forgotten.
Yes, point well taken there, Naina. And of course, just continuing with that, the measures that have been undertaken for MSMEs, including the change in classification, credit guarantee enhancement. Shubhrikant, what does all of that bode as far as the MSME sector is concerned?
So, Shireen, as far as the MSME sector is concerned, I think there was a lot of focus on that, and rightly so, because MSMEs are the backbone of any economy, and India is obviously not only not an exception, but is perhaps even more so in our case here. So something that we have been advocating for, which is an increase in the threshold of the definition of MSME, so increase in the threshold pertaining to investments and turnover, that has been granted, as well as a higher limit for the credit guarantees. So all of that will help, bring more money into SMEs, make credit available. But that apart, I think the general focus in terms of, even the export promotion mission, where it's not just the commerce and the finance ministries, but also the MSME ministry which comes into play, I think is important. We are in a situation where domestically speaking, our fundamentals are very strong. We have the benefit of a unified domestic market, but unquestionably there are external headwinds, and that is something that cannot be ignored. And in that context, I think MSMEs need hand-holding, and this budget does have plenty on offer in terms of hand-holding MSMEs, and see that they continue to play an integral role in India's growth story, thereby making growth more broad-based, more inclusive, and also with a positive impact on jobs. Because as you know, I think the most important outcome of supporting MSMEs is a boost to job creation, especially when a lot has been talked about the labor-intensive sectors, which will get special attention in this budget.
All right, Mr. Kanabar, I'll give you the final say before we close. There's a lot of cheer, a lot of optimism and a lot of confidence that the budget seems to have delivered on. But many of the announcements are work in progress, are yet to be operationalized. So on balance, where does this leave corporate India? Where does this leave the consumer? And where does this leave our aspiration to try and move beyond that growth range of 6.3 to 6.8%?
So first, you had asked a question earlier that does this mean a death knell for the old tax regime for individuals? And the answer is absolutely yes. If there was any doubt for any taxpayer, individual taxpayer, as to whether they should now migrate to the new tax regime, the answer is yes, they would, because it's far, far more beneficial. And you're very right that nobody wants to have deductions, which can be cantankerous. One would rather have a simple tax regime. Second, there was one mention about, and this is only a policy announcement, about a fast-track merger. And I wish that comes sooner rather than later, because NCLT today is overburdened with work. It takes months and months before a merger gets approved. And if a fast-track merger can be announced, that would really ease a lot of tension on NCLT. Coming to your question, this is a very forward, but is always a work in progress. One will wait to see next week as to what does the new income tax bill say. And that, of course, might go to a standing committee, and whenever it gets enacted, if it is indeed simple, it could be a harbinger for a lot of more foreign investments to come into the country.
All right, gentlemen, we will leave it there. Naina Lal Kidwai, Vijay Shankar, Shubhrakant Panda, Harsh and Anant Goenka and Dinesh Kanabar. Always a pleasure. Thanks very much to the top brass at FICCI for joining us here with your quick analysis of the budget that's been delivered by Nirmala Sitharaman. And the hope is that it will unleash the animal spirits, not just of corporate India, but of the Indian consumer as well. We will take a break. There's a lot more coming up on CNBC TV 18. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment with more. Well, we continue our coverage here on CNBC TV 18. You've heard from industry, you've heard from the economists, you've heard from the market participants, and it is now time to hear from the budget makers themselves. The secretaries of the Finance Ministry join us now, the Economic Affairs Secretary, Mr. Ajay Seth, and Mr. Nagaraju, the DFS Secretary, here with us on the CNBC TV 18 Budget Headquarters. Gentlemen, congratulations. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Let me start by asking you about the big C's consumption and the implications and the impact it's likely to have as far as growth is concerned. I'll put this in the context of what the former Chief Economic Advisor, K.V. Subramaniam, is saying about the multiplier impact of the tax cuts that you've been able to do. But I want to understand from you, what do you believe this could mean as far as the percentage of consumption growth as a percentage of GDP, and what this eventually means for growth as well?
See, what the estimated numbers are and what Finance Minister has announced, it means about 1 lakh crore on the income tax side. That will be more money in the hands of the people. How do they use it? Whether for consumption or for their savings or investment, buying house or buying durables, it is their call. Government took a position that yes, it needs to be enhanced and more money in the hands of the middle class. Depending upon where it goes, then multiplier effect will flow from.
But assuming, and I'm going by again what Mr. Subramaniam suggests, that the data says that 80% goes towards using it on spending and using it as discretionary spending, what will the multiplier impact be? I mean, you must have worked out some scenarios and some assessments on the implications.
So that's a matter of how it will pan out to be, and I would not like to jump to what the multiplier impact would be, because that is economy needs at this point of time get more money in the hands of the people. Those who are at the lower end of the income, which is about 1 lakh rupees per month, that's the income is there. Now 1 lakh crore, how they will use it, as I mentioned it, and it is left to them.
Okay, it's left to them. What does this mean now as far as the growth assumptions go, sir? Because the economic survey has pegged growth between 6.3 to 6.8%. 10.5 is the nominal GDP growth number that you're working with. Assuming inflation, what should we realistically expect growth? What are you working with? Would it be fair to assume that the economic survey number is the number that you're going with as well?
See, economic survey has assumed 6.3 to 6.8 range. Whether it will be at the nearer to the upper limit or the lower limit depends on that how the global situation pans out to be over next year. And there are several measures announced in this budget which will suggest that we can be closer to the higher limit.
To the higher end.
To the higher limit. That was several measures are there. But that is in the future. But for the purpose of doing the budget math, what is relevant is a nominal growth in the economy. That number is 10.2 or 10.3%, with a deflator of about 3.5 to 4%. That is what broadly the numbers are.
Okay. On the expenditure side, Mr. Seth, and that's what I want to understand from you. Has that given you the cushion to factor in this 1 lakh crore rupee revenue foregone on account of the tax relief that you've provided? Because there is a difference between the B, the RE, and then of course the B now goes up to about 50 point something lakh crore rupees. But the difference between the B to RE, has that provided you the cushion to move as much as you have on personal income tax?
See, budget making is always trying to balance different competing objectives are there. Number one, fiscal consolidation, which is an overall path, and announced that debt to GDP ratio must be coming down. There's a path. The second one, the revenues, and to some extent the revenues are moderated because of the changes in the income tax slabs and the rebate which have come. At the same time, one could find enough space to provide for priority expenditure. At the same time, announce for or provide monies for the new expenditure. For example, Research Development and Innovation Fund. Similar manner for Urban Challenge Fund and so on. So those and several missions which have been announced, one could provide for it. But yes, somewhere it has to lead to a more modest growth in what otherwise would have been possible. If you notice that on the capital expenditure side, as compared with where we are supposed to be in the revenue expenditure or the revised estimate, from about 10.1 lakh, next year is about 10% increase. That is a more moderate increase. However, on the capital expenditure side, effective capital expenditure, including what Government of India provides to the states for their capital expenditure, there is a good increase of about 20%. So it's a balancing different competing objectives. And I'm glad that the team guided by Finance Minister could find that right balance.
So, do you believe that what we are seeing today as far as consumption is concerned, the slowdown is a structural issue? Because when I asked the Chief Economic Advisor this question, he said he doesn't believe it's a structural issue, but you believe that this was the need of the hour, the intervention on consumption was the need of the hour, and which is what the budget has responded to.
See, the consumption has been growing, say at about 7%. There have been a minor variation from quarter to quarter. But at the same time, as again, you would have heard Finance Minister, you would have heard Honorable Prime Minister responding to what the expectations were. The government responds to those one, a middle class expecting that there should be more monies for them be in their pockets. That's why the government has responded to that and provided them a relief, a substantial change in the, it's not just a relief, it is a substantial change in the tax slabs itself. On top of it, the rebate which has been provided. So it is all across effective reduction in the rates because of the slab changes and plus the rebate which has been provided.
Yes, both reduction in rates as well as the slab changes that you talk about. But Mr. Nagaraju, let me come to you now, sir, and understand from you what you anticipate as far as credit offtake on the bank side is concerned in light of the many measures that have been taken. And also, do you believe the budget will enable more deposit mobilization? For instance, with what you've been able to do on the senior citizen side, do you believe it will aid deposit mobilization?
Yeah, you're right. The current growth, is about 8.2, something like that. We had agriculture growth rate of little more than 15%, and MSME growth rate again more than little 17%. The growth rates are robust even this year. Now with the senior citizens incentive, I think we expect that more deposits will flow into the banking system.
Okay.
And that we may actually improves our CASA, and thereby the banks will be able to lend more to the needy segments of the society, which may lead to higher growth rates. That's what our feeling.
Okay, so you anticipate that there will be higher growth as well as deposit mobilization
Correct.
on the back of the measures taken. I come back to a comment that came in from the economic survey also, and Mr. Nageshwaran told me that there were, of course, measures taken by the RBI that were warranted to take care of the situation, the overheating, so to speak, especially on the unsecured side, but that may have also put the brakes on growth. Do you believe that that is now a thing of the past, it is behind us?
Yeah, see, the point is, at that point of time, the RBI has cautioned, but it seems the NBFCs, if you look at it, both GNPA, gross NPAs as well net NPAs, not very high, not very large when compared to the banks. The NBFCs NPAs are about 1.2, 1.3. That's not the way out of the mark. So I think the RBI caution to NBFCs at that point of time relevant, but now I think the growth, the lending will move. The also thing is that the lending to unsecured is little steady, not increasing.
Okay. So less, you're not worried on that front any longer, or?
No, see, banks will take their own decisions, but as usual, they need to be very careful to give to unsecured. But it also shows that the unsecured is also a little hesitant to take loans.
Okay. We have limited time and a lot of questions, so let me come to you again, Economic Affairs Secretary, on some of the other measures that the budget has announced. And let's talk about the fiscal consolidation glide path. And I think that's got positive feedback from everybody that the government has stuck to its consolidation roadmap. But the move towards debt, does that provide you more flexibility as well when we talk about consolidation?
It does provide a flexibility to respond to the needs of the economy in a much more effective manner. If the economy is doing well, consolidation can be a much stronger pace. If the economy is not doing well, that means more support to the economy is needed through the fiscal expenditure. Moderation, there can be moderation in fiscal consolidation those years. And if you see what has been, details have come out, different scenarios have been suggested in the FRBM statement. 3 scenarios of fiscal consolidation have been assumed: mild, moderate, and high case. And of course, again, a combination comes in with growth rate being, nominal growth rate being 10, 10.5, and 11. So there are basically 9 combinations are possible. So that does provide a flexibility, that does provide a transparency, but direction is very clear that we have to build buffers, we have to bring down the debt to GDP ratio, and the goal is 50 plus minus 1%. By the end of the 16th Finance Commission period, which will be the financial year 30-31.
30-31. Let me address some of the other issues. Asset monetization, that was part of the Finance Minister's speech. 10 lakh crore rupees is the target that the Finance Minister has put down as far as asset monetization is concerned. If I remember correctly, it was 6 lakh crore rupees previously. How much was actually achieved on that front? What is the hope as far as the 10 lakh number is concerned?
First round was 5 lakh crore, and we expect that by the end of the financial year, it should be closer to about 90% achievement, which I find is a
90% of the 5 lakh crores.
5 lakh. And having done so, we feel that now the next round should be possible to do it, just double the number, 10 lakhs. And I do expect that in the coming weeks, the sector-wise details will be out.
So has the identification taken place, or will that process start now?
Niti Aayog has done the work. They have sat down with the different ministries, they have sat down with the different organizations which own those assets. The discussions have happened, and my sense is that they are ready with the plan. And of course, we would also like to get states also get into those areas, because several of their assets, especially on the transmission side, are good assets which can be, they can monetize and then plow back their money for fresh investment into the economy.
Okay, so that process is being taken forward by Niti Aayog. Mr. Nagaraju, let's understand the insurance-related measures that the government announced, 100% FDI, that cap moving from 76%. But there are caveats to that as well, including whether repatriation can take place or not. So can you articulate for us what we should expect now as part of the bill that will be tabled?
So while the bill talks about some measures in the both Insurance Act, LIC Act, IRDA, to bring everything into harmony. The main thing was, of course, 100% FDI. The FM's announcement also refers to the rules we framed on the on repatriation and the key management personnel who can be in the insurance companies all those things. So we comprehensively we are going to address both FDI as well as the rules made which was difficult to repatriation of dividends and key management personnel. All those we are going to review and simplify.
Review and simplify. I also want to understand from you, sir, we've heard from the government saying that they will infuse more capital into public sector undertakings like RINL. The plan perhaps is to do more for others as well, including MTNL. Is there a concern at the DFS end on the haircuts that banks may have to take in if the government were not to infuse additional capital?
See, on the RINL, there is no cut we have taken, the banks have taken.
Yes.
100%, whatever is there. Same, all the prudential norms will be applicable to for MTN also. As and when addition is required, the government, of course, will take addition. And I don't think, see, whatever is the RBI norms on taking the haircut, that will be applied for MTNL case also. So the banks are not worried at all that, in any case, the government actually doesn't tell the banks what to do. Okay, they are autonomous organizations. So they take decisions based on their own prudential norms.
On the FDI front, and I ask you this in the context of the challenging global environment that we're dealing with, and this was something that the budget had talked about last time around as well, Mr. Seth, this overhaul as far as the FDI regime is concerned, where are we at and what can we expect considering what we're seeing happen in the rest of the world today?
See, this was announced last year, and thereafter 2 BITs have been signed with UAE and with Uzbekistan. What Finance Minister has announced today is to revisit the model BIT, which was done in the year 2014, make it more investor friendly. We have moved significantly from the position what was 2014 as a fresh look at the entire thing, considering what the global environment is, make it more investor friendly. And that idea is, yes, of course, to attract more FDI, that first develop India, that is the motto. When they invest here, obviously that entire set of economic activities happen in India.
What will be the thrust of the changes that are being proposed or being considered at this point in time?
I'm not getting into the specifics. What the investors are looking for, that any change in the policy, that they should be protected against that. And we find that our experience of 10 years, wherein there's a consistency of the policy, it is a unidirection, meaning that it doesn't go to and fro, it keeps on moving towards more liberal, more market-based economy, at the same time taking care of the proper balance between the state interest as well as the investor one. So we have the good experience of 10 years to revisit the 2013 or 2014 model.
I know your timer is going off, Mr. Seth, so he's kept his timer on, so his timer is going off, but in exactly 10 seconds, sir, how confident do you feel at the end of this budget to be able to get to that upper end of 6.8% that the survey highlighted?
100%.
100%?
Yes.
So 6.8 is doable and deliverable?
Is doable, and see that there are several factors which are in our control, or if they are not in our control, we can strive to create conditions within our own economy to bring it closer to that. There are few elements which are beyond our economy, on which we are only recipient of word external to India. So that uncertainty always remain, but yes, on the day of the budget, I feel fully confident that upper end is doable as a practical number. Is doable as a practical number. I have many more questions, gentlemen, but we're out of time. But Mr. Seth and Mr. Nagaraju, we'll see you on the CNBC TV 18 budget verdict. Many, many thanks for joining us here today. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Economic Affairs Secretary and the DFS Secretary. Don't go anywhere. The budget makers from North Block with us in a moment. Stay right there.
Thank you.
Presently, taxpayers can claim the annual value of self-occupied properties as nil only on the fulfillment of certain conditions. Considering the difficulties faced by taxpayers, it is proposed to allow the benefit of 2 such self-occupied properties without any condition. To streamline the process of transfer pricing and to provide an alternative to yearly examination, I propose to introduce a scheme for determining arm's length price of international transaction for a block period of 3 years. This will be in line with global best practices. With a view to reduce litigation and provide certainty in international taxation, the scope of safe harbor rules is being expanded. A number of senior and very senior citizens have very old national savings schemes accounts. As interest is no longer payable on such accounts, I propose to exempt withdrawals made from NSS by individuals on or after 29th August 2024. I am also proposing to allow similar treatment to NPS Vatsalya accounts as is available to normal NPS accounts subject to overall limits. Presently, taxpayers can claim the annual value of self-occupied properties as nil only on the fulfillment of certain conditions. Considering the difficulties faced by taxpayers, it is proposed to allow the benefit of 2 such self-occupied properties without any condition. To streamline the process of transfer pricing and to provide an alternative to yearly examination, I propose to introduce a scheme for determining arm's length price of international transaction for a block period of 3 years. This will be in line with global best practices. With a view to reduce litigation and provide certainty in international taxation, the scope of safe harbor rules is being expanded. A number of senior and very senior citizens have very old national savings schemes accounts. As interest is no longer payable on such accounts, I propose to exempt withdrawals made from NSS by individuals on or after 29th August 2024. I am also proposing to allow similar treatment to NPS Vatsalya accounts as is available to normal NPS accounts subject to overall limits. Presently, taxpayers can claim the annual value of self-occupied properties.
Welcome back. You're watching our continuing coverage here from the CNBC TV 18 budget headquarters. You've been listening to industry, economists and market participants, the budget makers right here with us. We have a packed house, the Chief Economic Advisor, the Expenditure Secretary, the CBIC Chairman, as well as the CBDT Chairman here with us in our studios. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us and congratulations on the budget. CA, let me start by asking you, many of the themes that you highlighted in the economic survey being taken forward here in the budget, the consumption story, that's clearly been prioritized in the budget this time around. What will the multiplier impact be as far as growth is concerned, sir?
So, I mean, I can't give you a quantitative estimate, but obviously the fact that there is going to be more disposable income in the hands of the public will naturally boost urban consumption. And more than that, I think the confidence it also generates will be an additional kicker as far as the consumption story is concerned. So it all basically, I think, and given that the finance minister delivered more than what people had anticipated, I think the feel-good effect will last for much longer than what it might have been the case otherwise. So I think as far as the estimates are concerned, we have to wait and see how it pans out. But I have a very confident and good feeling that the consumption impact of this will be quite significant.
Which will get you to the higher end of that 6.8%
yes.
that you laid out as the estimate?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say that now I'm willing to say that the the risk is that the number is on the higher side of my range rather than towards the midpoint or the lower end of my range.
Okay, so the higher end of the range very much
now looks within grasp.
Within grasp, and that's the upshot of what has been delivered. Expenditure Secretary, let me put the numbers into perspective. The FY25 expenditure at 48.21 lakh crore rupees, RE of 47.16 lakh crore rupees, and the BE of FY26 at 50.65 lakhs. So that's where you've managed to pull out that cushion as far as the personal income tax reductions are concerned, isn't it?
So as far as the BE for the next year is concerned, on an aggregate basis, we are going around 7% more than the RE for this year. But then we have still prioritized capital expenditure. If you take the aggregate capital expenditure both on what is done directly by the central government as well as the grants for Capex which are usually given to the state governments, we are having a 17% increase. So within the expenditure, even though the expenditure increase is only 7%, 17% increase is on the Capex side.
On the Capex side, there was, the expectation, and I discussed it with the CA last night as well, of 25% growth in Capex. I want to ask both of you that question, even though you said on an aggregate basis the number is significantly higher at about 15 to 16%. But is it now fair to assume that, this 10% kind of growth number is what we should work with, what we should assume? I'll start by asking you, CA.
No, I don't think there is any such set formula here. It depends on the context. So I think, as we discussed yesterday, I think the Capex numbers do have to grow because there is a requirement of public sector. I said some of it could happen in the public-private partnership mode as well. In fact, the FM announced in her budget speech that there will be a greater reliance on PPP mode as well. Yeah. So I don't think we are working on a set formula of a steady 10% increase every year. It depends on the economic context and the requirements.
On the Capex side, the expectation is that there will now be a pickup on account of all the sort of pause that was on account of the elections. What's your own expectation on that?
That's correct. For example, last year we have done 9.49 lakh crores on the capital expenditure, just pure capital expenditure by the central government. The first 3 months, because of the election and other reasons, the Capex was low. In fact, it's also a part of the economic survey where they compare what was done in the first few months as compared to what is done. So now we have caught up, and in fact, if you compare April to January end, for the figures that we have so far, we have surpassed the capital expenditure of last year by around 30,000 crores. So last year we did 9.49 by March end, so we should easily cross it, and the figure of 10.12, which is by the way the highest ever capital expenditure that the central government has ever done, is easily achievable.
It's achievable. Okay, and you believe that we'll get there by the end of the fiscal year?
By 31st March we should be there, or we might even exceed it a little bit.
Even exceed it a little bit. Okay, that's good to hear. CBDT Chairman, let me come to you now, sir, and understand the big cut that's coming on the personal income tax side. Do you believe that with these measures that have been announced today, the sun will finally set on the old tax regime? Do you believe that this is enough sweetener to move everyone to the new tax regime?
Yes, there's definitely a nudge to move to the new tax regime. There are two options. Both the options are available to the taxpayer. One is without deductions and the other is with deductions. We are moving to a regime where the deductions and the exemptions were moving away from there, and we are trying to put in place a simplified tax structure which actually enables determination of income in a straight way rather than actually going in through deductions and all. So that is basically a nudge to the taxpayer also to move to the new tax regime, and in fact people have responded even in the past. 74% people have already come to the new tax regime.
Do you believe that this will move 74 to 100%?
Well, we would welcome that. We'll definitely welcome that.
Okay, let me come to you, CBIC Chief. Today, we've also got the GST collection number coming in, and a 12% increase, if I remember correctly, year on year, as far as the monthly collections go. What is the expected run rate now? 1.96 lakh crore rupees is what we've been able to do. What is the expected run rate from here on?
So far, GST collections are concerned, till December, from April to December, the GST revenue collection for the center was increasing at the rate of 10.2%, whereas the ask rate was 10.9%. So this month revenue collection at 12.3% growth on all India basis has given us confidence that we will achieve the target which has been set for GST revenue collection for the center.
On the indirect tax side, sir, there has been, some shortfall in terms of what has been targeted. Do you believe you'll be able to meet that, match that, cover it up by the end of the financial year?
In the revised estimates, there is slight downward revision for indirect taxes, and it has been revised from 16.19 lakh crores to 16.02 lakh crores. And that revision is mainly on account of the revenue from the customs duties and central excise duties. So with this growth in GST revenue collection, because in the last quarter, the revenue collection from GST is normally higher compared to Q1, Q2, Q3. So that revenue collection is giving us the confidence that we'll achieve that asking rate of 10.9%. And overall, the ask rate for indirect tax collection is 7.1%. So we are likely to achieve the revised estimates for revenue collection for indirect taxes.
For indirect taxes. Let me come to both of you now and talk about what the thrust of the budget is also on a new center-state compact in many ways. And CA, let me start by asking you about that. Whether it is these loans that the center has guaranteed, or it is sort of bringing this public-private partnership along with the center and states on things like tourism and so on and so forth. How do you see this panning out, and what could it mean when it is finally operationalized in terms of growth?
I mean, what it means is that I think there will be a lot of good practices from multiple states that will get disseminated and diffused, and it will also open up and widen the areas of cooperation across well beyond the very sectors that are talked about. I think it will only pave the way for a faster implementation of many of the government projects, including in other areas. So I think this is exactly what is needed, because much of the low-hanging fruits with respect to many of the policy actions at the union government level have been plucked. So now much more needs to be done in terms of collaboration at lower levels of the bureaucracy between union and states, and the budget has taken very important steps in that regard.
On some of the other schemes that were announced, the agriculture scheme, a much more holistic view being taken there as far as this Dhan Dhanya scheme is concerned, or even putting more money into the scheme for stalled housing and so on and so forth. Again, the multiplier impact of some of these schemes, Mr. Govind.
As far as if there are stalled projects, or even, for example, stalled capital projects for which we give some money from the Government of India, if they are completed, obviously the multiplier effect will come. So multiplier effect generally comes when the project is completed and starts giving benefits. So I think in that sense, the states have a major role. In this year's budget, 25.60 lakh crores is to go from central government under various heads to the states. That includes devolution also. In fact, if you see, the central government budget is increasing by around 7% RE compared to the next year's BE, whereas the money which is going to the state government as per the budget is going to increase by 11%. So there is a higher proportion of money which is going to go to the state government, and state government support and cooperation is very vital to have the growth prospects up.
CBDT Chairman, let me ask you about the tax bill which will be taken to Parliament, and the Finance Minister made it clear that it will be sent to the Standing Committee, will be tabled in Parliament next week. Now, that lays out the roadmap as far as simplification is concerned, and many tax experts were commenting that they may be out of a job at the end of that if that kind of simplification is in fact taken forward, but simplification seems to be the thrust, not so much rationalization at this point in time.
See, rationalization has happened over a period of time. Now, this Income Tax Act is a 1961 act, and over a period of time, a lot of redundancies have crept in. Some provisions have become obsolete also, and there are some repetitive provisions that are there in the act. Plus, the language in the act is also a bit convoluted, and at times normal taxpayer finds it difficult to actually go through that language. So the attempt now is to simplify the language and to make it easy for the taxpayer to understand the provisions of law. So, complexities in the transactions would happen. It would remain, but then the language would be simple. The way we would express the provisions in the law, that would be simplified. You see, I would give you one perspective that even this time, when we have brought out these amendments in the bill, simultaneously we have also issued frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
Right. So that is an attempt to actually explain to people what is the intent behind the provisions and the amendments. So that's one way of simplification. So the same logic and philosophy we are actually adopting here when we are bringing this.
There was a fair degree of nervousness on whether there would be any changes as far as the capital gains tax regime was concerned, and we'd already seen that hike coming in last year. The expectation was that perhaps you would leave it as is, or maybe provide a little bit of relief, or certainly provide relief on the STT side, which has seen a significantly higher collection over your target, and you've set an even stiffer target for STT.
Yeah, so we have provided, you see, STT, of course, the collections have been encouraging, and we have kept it at that. We have not disturbed it because now we were actually moving towards this tax slab sort of relaxation. And STT is as per our expectations, so we have kept it like that.
Let's talk about the changes on the indirect tax side. The tariff changes that have come in, the finance minister had said that this is in continuation to the announcements that came in last budget as well. If you can explain to us where this leaves things, and also in light of the threat of the Trump administration invoking tariffs, including on countries like India, have not been specified yet. How prepared, how ready are we?
On this, the objective was to simplify the tariff rate structure. Secondly, to provide the effectiveness to the Indian industry to remain competitive. Third was to provide sector-specific higher protection for a short duration. And fourthly, it was for ease of doing business. Towards that, from the earlier rate of 15, it has been reduced by 7 rates, and now the total rates which are there in the tariff are only 8. So the rates which have been removed are 25%, 30%, 35%, 40%, 100%, 125%, and 150%. So India was mentioned is having a very high tariff rates. So those high tariff rates have been now removed, and now the rates which are remaining are 0, 2.5%, 5%, 7.5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, and then 70%. And the logic behind keeping these rates is that from 0 to 10%, it is a graded structure, and items have been placed in this graded structure in a manner that raw materials are generally at 0% or 2.5%. The goods after these raw materials are processed, and in intermediate stage, those are at 5 and 7.5%. Capital goods have been kept at 7.5%, finished goods at 10%. Apart from that, on 15% and 20%, mostly items are of such nature which are either covered under PMP scheme or PLI scheme. And apart from that, there are certain items where there were surge of imports. Those items have been kept at these rates. So the items which were at higher rates now have been brought down to the lower rates, but in most of the cases, effective rate of duty has been kept unchanged by imposing AIDC on certain items wherever it was felt that duty can be decreased without impacting the industry. There the rates have actually been lowered. Apart from that exercise, another thing which has been done is that items which were subject to cess as well as surcharge, there the surcharge has been exempted. There are 82 such tariff lines where the surcharge has been exempted. In addition to that, there were effective rates unconditionally. Those have been now brought in the tariff. And there are 51 such tariff lines where the effective rates have now been tariffized. So it is easier to refer to the effective rate because it is there in the tariff. So with these objectives, this exercise has been conducted, and so it will bring a lot of simplification in the tariff structure, and the average rate, average customs duty rate has now come down from 11.65% to 10.66%.
Okay.
And now it is nearer to the rates in ASEAN countries.
Okay.
But this is in respect of industrial goods. We have not done this exercise in case of agriculture goods and textiles.
Okay, but coming back to my question on how prepared we are for the eventuality of tariffs being administered by the Trump regime. They've talked about pharmaceuticals even when we talk about the threat of tariffs on India. How ready are we?
So far, these are just certain statements have been made, but presently there is no such tariff which is being imposed on the Indian exports. So as the things will evolve, measures will be taken accordingly.
But on that, to cope with the possibility, and today is the first day when the tariffs come in on Mexico and Canada, but to prepare for that, how ready are we today? And on the issue of overcapacity and dumping in India, the need for safeguard duties and so on and so forth, the steel sector has been asking for that. This matter is under active consideration. Do you believe that there is a case to be made across different other sectors as well?
I think it will be difficult for me to comment on it because these are all sector-specific situations, and different administrative ministries in collaboration with the Commerce Ministry will have to decide on how appropriate, when, how much and for how long, etc. So it will be not appropriate for me to comment on that.
But on the tariff possibility and what that could mean for India if the US...
Look, I think it's speculative. Let's wait and see whether, because after all, in general, exports as a percentage of GDP in India has been rising, but of that, exports to the United States comprise of both goods and services. So we need to wait and see which are the areas that attract tariff, if at all they do, and how to prepare for it. I think it is these are all something that we need to approach carefully rather than discussing them in public.
No, fair enough. I understand that, and we don't even have the details at this point in time. But let's now address GST. Of course, that's not a matter for the budget, but since we have moved on personal income tax and provided relief on personal income tax, the hope is that we move as far as rationalization on GST is concerned as well. The GOM has been set up. It's been looking at this matter. The matter was deferred at the last GST Council meeting. What should we realistically expect, Mr. Agarwal?
In GST, the exercise is done in a completely different environment. In custom side, it is the union government which has to do this exercise. In GST side, basically the exercise is done by a GOM has been set up, and GOM has to present the report to GST Council. Their union as well as states are part of that council, and issues are deliberated, and then decisions are taken, recommendations are made, and then the rates are notified. So it's altogether a different exercise, but GOM is going into all the aspects. They are very comprehensively looking into that tax slabs, how the items have been placed on those tax slabs, what is to be done to remove the classification disputes. So all those aspects, including the revenue, because revenue is very important for the states as well as for union. So all these aspects are being looked into by the GOM. And once they are ready with their report, it will be presented before the next GST Council or the Council.
Do we have a date yet for the next GST Council meeting?
Not yet.
Not yet, but that I would imagine that once the elections are out of the way, at least in Delhi, we will perhaps have more clarity on that. But at the end of all of this, and the Finance Minister in her speech and then of course in her briefing also made the point that the tax cuts will impact everybody and not just those who fall under the 12 lakh rupee bracket. What does this mean now, sir? And I was asking the CA that question as well, but what does the data tell you in terms of the implications and the impact that it's likely to have?
See, the changes that we have made in the tax slab, that is applicable to all the taxpayers, non-corporate taxpayers. So therefore, this would, while you calculate the tax liability of a person, be it income of 12 lakhs or 24 lakhs or even more, these tax slabs would be applicable. Now, as against earlier tax slab of 0 to 3%, zero rate of tax, and then 3 to 7, 5%, and so on and so forth. Now, in general, the tax has changed, and the slabs are 0 to 4% is 0, 4 to 8 lakhs is 5 lakhs, and so on. And as a result of that, a person, taxpayer, with the income of 12 lakhs, of course, otherwise he would have the new tax slabs paid a tax of 60,000, but through rebate, the tax liability has been brought to 0. Similarly, if we talk about a person having a total income of 24 lakhs, the net benefit that the person would get is of 1,10,000. And this would be applicable for all income above 24 lakhs. So therefore, all the taxpayers across the board, they stand to gain benefit out of this, and the total implication of this entire exercise would be about 1 lakh crores. So this is what this amount would be, of course, available to the people to take a call as to
put back into the economy through either spending on it or savings and investments.
Yes.
So that is what we'll have to see. Mr. Govil, let me ask you, on the back of the many announcements that have come in, and several are works in progress. For instance, on the deregulation front, the expert committee will provide its recommendations, and that process is expected to take about a year or so. There are many others on the export front, for instance, as well, that is a work in progress. What are the realistic timelines, especially on the export front? Because it is a challenging environment that we are dealing with that we should realistically expect.
On the export front, I think the Ministry of Commerce has already done a significant amount of groundwork, and we hope that they will be ready soon to make a comprehensive proposal and bring it before the authorities for approval. So I think over the last 5-6 months they have been working on it. So I think they should be ready with it pretty soon.
On the defense Capex side, I think there is some disappointment that the defense Capex is not as or is not proportional to what the needs are at this point in time. Would you have a comment on that? Because that's, I think, only up 1.8%, under 2% at this point.
So the way we look at it is relating to the requirement of the sector. Now, defense has a peculiar procurement structure. Most of the expenditure on defense happens in large-scale procurements or procurements of expensive equipment. And that procurement process is lumpy. Sometimes you might have a lot of orders being given, sometimes there is a lull. So it is hard to make an accurate estimate year by year and to increase it by a certain percentages every year. For example, this year we expect, and the RE figures will show that the defense may not be able to completely utilize the budget estimate that they had given, so the RE is less than the B. But the next year we have, the proposals will show, the next year's B is more than the B for this year. So we hope that it will pick up next year.
Okay, so let me end by asking each one of you and you can now speak much more freely than you could yesterday, CA. So let me ask you, for you, what you believe is the big headline from Budget 2025 that you would like people to focus on?
It's putting spending power back in the hands of the people.
Putting spending power back in the hands of the people. Mr. Govind?
Apart from that, fiscal prudence.
Fiscal prudence. Mr. Agarwal?
The steps which have been taken for doing ease of business and trade facilitation.
Okay. Mr. Agarwal again.
So it is one, trust first, the basic philosophy of trust first that guides the budget direct tax proposals, which reflects from the reduction or change in the tax slabs, as also affording the taxpayer a facility of filing an updated return. So that is another aspect. So there are then rate rationalization in TDS and TCS. So trust first is the theme, basic theme, which guides the direct tax.
Yes, and we have seen the TCS and TDS simplifications and rationalization coming in as well. But the headline, if I could pull it out from these gentlemen, is that they feel very confident of being able to achieve the higher end of the estimate that was put down by the Chief Economic Advisor in the economic survey as far as growth is concerned at 6.8%. It's within grasp. In his words, it's within grasp. Mr. Nageshwar, Mr. Govil, Mr. Agarwal, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18 on the budget headquarters. The budget makers will continue. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment with more.
Speaker, I present the budget for 25-26. This budget continues our government's efforts to A. Accelerate growth, B. Secure inclusive development, C. Invigorate private sector investments, D. Uplift household sentiments, and E. Enhance spending power of India's rising middle class. Together, we embark on a journey to unlock our nation's tremendous potential for greater prosperity and global positioning under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. As the first quarter of the 21st century, continuing geopolitical headwinds suggest lower global economic growth over the medium term. However, our aspiration for a Viksit Bharat inspires us, and the transformative work we have done during our government's first 2 terms guides us to march forward resolutely. Our economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. Our development track record for the past 10 years and structural reforms have drawn global attention. Confidence in India's capability and potential has only grown in this period. We see the next 5 years as a unique opportunity to realize Sabka Vikas, stimulating balanced growth of all regions. The great Telugu poet and playwright Gurujada Apparao had said, "Deshamante matti kadoy, deshamante manushuloy," meaning a country is not just its soil, a country is its people. In line with this, for us, Viksit Bharat encompasses zero poverty, 100% quality good school education, access to high quality, affordable and comprehensive health care, 100% skilled labor with meaningful employment, 70% women in economic activities, and farmers making our country the food basket of the world. In this budget, the proposed development measures span 10 broad areas, focusing on Garib, youth, Annadata, and Nari, spurring agricultural growth and productivity, building rural prosperity and resilience, taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path, boosting manufacturing and furthering Make in India, supporting MSMEs, enabling employment-led development, investing in people, economy, and innovation, securing energy supplies, promoting exports, and nurturing innovation. For this journey of development, our 4 powerful engines are agriculture, MSME, investments, and exports. The fuel, our reforms, our guiding spirit, inclusivity, and the destination, Viksit Bharat. This budget aims to initiate transformation.
BCTV 18. Let me start by asking you for the overarching theme of the budget, which seems to focus on consumption, Capex, and consolidation. How do you believe the budget is going to change the needle in the attempt to amplify the growth momentum?
This is a phenomenally great budget. The way it has been balanced, we have the Capex program, the entire Capex program is intact, it's going steady. We have a lot of focus on deregulation. There is huge focus on manufacturing and stimulating demand. I mean, practically everything that is required in a good budget. It's a dream budget in my opinion. And I thank Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Finance Minister for bringing out this such a comprehensive budget where we are looking at a 4.4% fiscal deficit, where most of the rich world today is running fiscal deficits significantly higher than this, and still we have practically every sector covered and a very consistent investment program going on. So I think this is a very balanced, very good budget. It's in a sense, it's a dream budget.
Yes, that certainly is the feedback that's coming in from many quarters, Mr. Vaishnaw. But let's talk a little bit about railways. Railway Capex coming in at 2.64 lakh crore rupees. I also want to understand from you if you can give us some color on the railway internals in terms of the operating ratio as well as the spending plans for the year ahead.
Absolutely. 2,52,000 crore rupees budgetary support. And at the PPP investments, 2,64,000 crore rupees is the total capital allocation in the budget. And this is very important because the momentum which is there in railways, in the last 10 years, our Prime Minister himself has focused so much on railways and changing the entire infrastructure, getting new technologies, getting new passenger amenities, new types of trains. Everything is on the cards. And this budget allocation gives us a huge kind of help in maintaining that momentum. Total about 4,60,000 crore rupees worth projects have been included in the budget, which includes new lines, doubling, gauge conversion, completing the electrification, which is almost reaching 97% now. So in a sense, practically every aspect of railway will be benefited by this. I'll give 5 specific points here. One, will be manufacturing about 100 new Amrit Bharat trains, which are all non-air conditioned, practically for the low income category of families. Then we'll be manufacturing 50 Namo Bharat trains, which are for the short distance, roughly 250 kilometer distance, cities which are located 250 kilometers away. So basically having a shuttle kind of connect between them. Then we'll be manufacturing about 200 new Vande Bharat trains, including sleeper as well as the chair car versions, and 1,000 new flyovers and underpasses. And the allocation on safety will increase from 1,14,000 crore. It will go up to 1,16,000 crore. And we'll also be achieving 3 major milestones in the coming months. First is we'll be crossing 1.6 billion tons of cargo. Second, we'll be completing 100% electrification. And third, we'll be crossing 3 lakh crore revenue benchmark. So these are very major important milestones that we are going to cover in the coming months.
Well, certainly important milestones that you've highlighted. 3 lakh crores in revenue, 100% electrification target you hope to achieve as well. But just on the operating ratio as well, Mr. Vaishnaw, if you can leave us with that number too before I move on to the other sectors.
Absolutely. See, the costs we have, the cost of salary, wages, the cost of pension, the cost of energy, the cost of maintenance, the entire cost we are able to meet from the revenue that the railways is earning, because the volume has increased significantly. If you look at 10 years ago, the loading used to be just about 1 billion tons. Now it is 1.5 billion plus, and this year we'll be crossing 1.6 billion tons. Same is the case of passengers increasing steadily. So combine that along with bringing the cost efficiencies by reducing diesel consumption, increasing electrical traction, and also having better maintenance so that the losses during transportation are reduced. Now we are able to meet all the costs, and this operating ratio now is in the range of 98 to 98.5, in that range. So this is very healthy, and despite not increasing any fares and maintaining that passenger subsidy of about 58,000 crore rupees, while maintaining that, we are able to meet the entire expenditure, which is very good.
Okay, let me then ask you about the other sectors that you look after as well, Mr. Vaishnaw. The component PLI scheme, the hope was that it would be coming in the budget, but you had told me when we spoke a short while ago in Davos that the consultation process is still on, so the window is still open on that. Could you confirm that, sir?
See, 3 major reforms have been announced which are going to directly have a positive impact on the component manufacturing ecosystem, or rather the entire electronics and semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem. First is the rationalization of custom duties. Second is the very nuanced